Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. Welcome to my craft room. This is my WiP It Wednesday video where I show you all the crafty projects I worked on, whether I worked on them for an itty bitty bit amount of time or I worked all the way through and finished that project. I keep everything over in a pile over here, and woo, have I got a big pile for you today, so let's get started. For any of you regulars who watch all of my videos, you'll have seen my scrappy quilt as you go herringbone project that I've been working on. I have got the top all finished. It's all stitched together. I like the way when I stitched it together, it ended up having these really cool triangles. I'm going to try to go ahead and put a picture up afterwards so you can see it. I'll hang it up on the wall and get a nice picture of the whole thing just to give you a better idea of what it looks like. But that is all stitched together nice and pretty. I like the back too, where all the different colors of the fabrics are peeking through against the batting. But that won't be peeking through for long because I also finished the backing. Once again, I'll put a separate picture up just so you guys can see this. I grabbed some of the fabrics that were in the top and I just started cutting chunks off and stitching them together. I started with this button fabric. Then to make it the length that I needed, I went ahead and added these kites and the Winnie the Pooh, and it needed to be a little bit wider, so I put some houses on this side, and it still wasn't wide enough, so I put some more Winnie the Pooh over here, some of the bugs, I put these cute kitty cats, more bugs, and then the engagement rings. And it just went ahead and made it big enough to cover the back with a little extra breathing room, so when I go ahead and stitch it all together, I'll be all set. Then I still need to make the binding, and that will definitely be, well, I'm thinking it's definitely going to be scrappy, but you never know. Okay, let's balance out that sewing with a little bit of knitting. Once again, I'm going to try to alternate so that we don't get stuck staring at the same thing. I finished a gray square of the knitting dishcloths. I am back to knitting dishcloths now that you've seen the how-to video, so maybe you'll be seeing more of these. I have this on my to-do list to go ahead and put these up in my shop, and I'm going to be calling them, they're not always that pretty because sometimes they get a little wonky, you know, if I don't pay attention and I make them a little bit of the wrong size, but whatever, and sometimes they're 2 or 3 colors, so I decided I'm going to be calling them my ugly dishcloths, and I'll be putting them up in my art fire shop, but I'll let you know, and the link's down below if you want to peek ahead of time. They're not there yet though. So I did start on a new one. And since I had the gray in the bag, I went ahead and started working on a new gray one. I am past the decreases. The decreases are here, so I'm at the home stretch. There'll be enough left over to make a Franken-pieced one, or Franken-knit one. Yeah, a Franken-knit dishcloth with some of the gray. And I definitely have plenty of the green to make another one, and I'll be adding that left over with this one. And that's kind of why I'm going to call them my ugly dishcloths, because they're dishcloths. They don't have to be fancy. The ones I want to sell is just because I enjoy making these, I want to just put them in my shop so people who don't make them or don't want to make them can purchase them and use them. I don't necessarily make them, nice and pretty for giving as a gift, even though they're still good for a gift. The ones with only one color versus the 3 colors aren't going to wash the dishes any better, right? It's okay if they have 3 colors, it just adds more vibrancy to the kitchen. Let's do another knitting one just because I have a big pile up of knitting ones here. This is the Mitis Hat. I do have the folded brim that I was showing on another video on how to do. That is all done. Well, I think we were right, yeah, obviously last week we were right there because that's where I showed the video. So I went ahead and I knit the whole thing. This is about 9.5 inches. I still need to weave in my ends and everything, so that's why you could see a hole at the top here still, but once you pull it tight and weave in the ends, it just goes away. I tried this on. It is nice and warm and soft and comfortable. You can fold it up and then you would have a triple brim because you've got the 2 pieces here and the one of the hat. This is with the Caron Simply Soft. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. I started working back on, I really wanted to do some embroidery, and I didn't want, since we're doing an embroidery along, I didn't want to work on that project without you guys with me. So I decided to bring back out my, what is this called? This is called the Hocus Pocusville by Crabapple Hill. This is block number 5, the Black Cauldron block, the Black Cauldron Cafe. It may be the block number 5, but it's the first one I'm stitching. I stitched a bunch of this pathway down here, and I worked on this tree. I'm trying to do, for this one I'm using 3 strands of embroidery floss. It normally comes 6 to a strand. When I'm cutting a little bit of an arm's length, I cut from my fingertip to about my neck. I put it in half, so out of those 6 strands I can get 2 working strands. So I'm trying to, whenever I pick up this project, to do both of those working strands. So one, 3.5, 4 foot strand got me all of this. It doesn't look like a lot, and it really isn't. It does take quite a bit of time, it seems, to get it done, but it is relaxing and it forces you to slow down. I don't have any time constraints on this. When this project's done, it's done. When it's done, it's done. I want to make sure I get it done before I can no longer stitch or sew it together into a quilt top, but other than that, I'm not rushing. Now, I told you last week I wasn't going to work on Robbie's socks. Now, I did work on them just a very little. I only did 6 rounds on his one sock. Oh, I just love how soft these are and how nice it's looking. I will be picking this back up because Christmas is not that far away now. I've decided that since I spent so much time, now I'm not complaining, just, this is how it is. I spend a lot of time making YouTube videos, answering comments, because I love chatting with you guys in the comments. It takes a while to make a video, edit a video, make the product for the video, so it takes up a lot of my weekday time. So I've decided that Sunday is going to be my day. No obligations, no obligation knitting or sewing or anything. I can do whatever I want, or I can sit there and stare at a wall and do nothing at all. So on Sunday, I've been breaking it up into either 1 hour or 2 hour segments throughout the day, and I've been just picking up different projects that bring me joy, and that's why I brought back into that embroidery project and things like that. I'm just going to use Sundays because even though I basically craft for a living and I craft for fun, I need to have a day where there's no obligations. I can do whatever I want or do nothing at all. So I've decided Sunday will be my day because I spent a couple hours in the afternoon on the Mom and Pop Quilt Shop's live stream. So that kind of breaks up my day and everything. So one of the things I worked on this past weekend, is I'd made 2 of these new postcards. The other one I made, I'll see if I can put a picture up at the end also. It had more of a rounded bottom to the coconut palm tree here. And I really like that look. But these pieces of fabric were already cut out and I just kind of put them down. It's one of those things where you're creating the design as you're just cutting out the fabric, and you can see how it looks when you get it done. And I really like the way it looked. I can't show you the second one because I've already mailed that out to someone's secret. Was it you? You'll find out soon if you get it in the mail. This right here is really fine grit sandpaper. It looks kind of speckled and rough because as I was ironing it, this is what came off the bottom of my iron. Because yes, I have a dirty iron. I try to keep it very clean, but even though it looks clean, obviously it has some bit of film left to it. And it came off on the sandpaper. And I'm okay with that because it toned down the brightness of the sand and it kind of gave it a little bit more color and dimension to it like that. And I liked it. I used some scraps of batiks that I have here, and these were little scraps that I pulled out of my trash where most people will throw these little strips away. Well, I just use it for applique. These little spots for the coconut and everything, these were just the trunk and everything was just a piece left over from where I did the art quilt with the tree on the batik background. I didn't cut really any of these pieces down to size. They were already there. So a lot of times if you want to do applique, if you're going to be throwing away scraps, they're very, very usable. And this one had already had fusible on it anyway. I didn't even have to add fusible. I'm using the Singer because, as I've mentioned before, my brother has gone to take my brother's sewing machine, sorry about that, my brother's sewing machine has gone to sleep and taken a little nap for a while. Yeah, I have this hope that if I leave it in a box in a closet for 6 months, it'll miraculously heal itself. Hey, stranger things have happened, right? But anyways, with the Singer, I haven't figured out. Okay, I'm a little nervous to try to see if it can free motion. It doesn't seem like it's going to free motion. None of the directions say that you can do that with this machine. I'm not really sure, but I didn't want to mess with that. I just wanted to sew. So I kind of got little jagged circles around my coconut, but it's okay. I like it anyway. But that's what I did, is I finished off a lot of these. You've seen all these made before, but they didn't have their backs on it, and some of them weren't quilted. So I just gone through and I'd stitched them all on. I finished stitching down this applique and put the little button on for the center of the flower and added the backs. Same thing with this one. So that's all I did. I went through. Some of these are going to be going in the shop. Some of them will be going to be sent out in the mail. So I spent some time with those. I got a lot done on my 3-color cashmere cowl. Like I told you guys before, the beginning of the knitting is really slow and cumbersome, but once you get past a certain amount, it kind of weighs down the fabric of your knitting fabric here, and it just makes knitting around and around a lot easier, and it seems to go quicker for me. So here I was here, and now I'm all the way up there. I've already changed back into this. So I think that's looking really good. I love the way that these two purples are working together. But I want to show you, I made one for myself a couple years ago, and I wanted to show you what one looks like completely finished. Now I say this, I finished this a couple years ago, right? Well, I still haven't woven in any of the ends, and yes, I've worn it without the ends woven in. So this is basically what it looks like. I am down. When I did my version, these stripes are supposed to be up here. You're supposed to do a dark and a light and a dark and a light, and then you work the stripes, but I wasn't paying attention and I did a dark and a light and the stripes, and then I just threw another dark and a light to make it tall enough. But this is basically what it's going to look like. It has some nice lace work up at the top. So this is nice and toasty warm. A couple years ago when I did finish this, I wore it to walk around the neighborhood and stuff. Sometimes we get some really, really windy days, and it turned out really well. It's nice and toasty warm. But yeah, I have a lot of ends to weave in still. But since it's mine, I just tucked them in and ignored it, right? So just to give you an idea of how much more I have to make, this is where I'm at. And this is where I need to get to. I'll get there eventually. I did work on my Bright Crazy sweater. This is the antler cardigan from Tin Can Knits. When I get all the way up to the shoulders area, I don't know if I told you yet, but there's some cables up there, and I'm kind of getting excited to actually get up there, but I have a long way to go. I'm at 9.5 inches, and I believe I told you last time I have to go to 19 inches, 17 inches, something like that. Probably 19. But I put up probably close to 14 or 15 rows on this, which is really nice. I think the next time I do a sweater like this, I'm going to go ahead and steek it. If you're familiar with knitting, instead of going back and forth like this, you stitch it all the way around, and then you cut your knitting down the center. You do a special technique, and you go from having a pullover sweater to a cardigan. I get too warm in a pullover sweater. I like a cardigan because I like to be able to open it up and let some of that excess heat out. Eventually I'm going to have to set it down and work, pick it up and work mainly on that and skip some of these other projects. But I am in Christmas present mode, so things for myself kind of get put away. Here's the button project. I didn't work on this end at all, but I thought I'd show you that. There's the purples and blues. I added all of these yellow buttons in. They're kind of bright, so you can't necessarily see. They look a little bit bright and crazy in the camera here. And I worked on the red end. I think I'm going to have to start looking for some of these. I don't mind the big buttons. I don't mind having a few more of those, but I think I'd like to get some more of the medium size buttons to add in. I need some more colors. I have a lot of the smaller buttons, but as I said before, I want to make sure I cover this up before I start adding the small ones in. So I'm going to go and see. Last I saw, looking online, we have a bead shop up the road from me, and I want to see if they have any type of bulk buttons to buy. Nothing fancy, just your basic plastic buttons. I have some of the fancier ones that go on top when the bottom layer is done. But once again, this is not a short-term project. This is a long-term, just kind of work on it in between things. I worked on this one a little bit on Sunday too. This is one of the ones where I spent about an hour on. And here's a bag you've never seen. I made myself this huge tote bag. This guy is, oh, he's 24 inches tall. But I had just this one chunk of this fabric, and I just loved it so much. It's just so fun. I kind of like the palm trees and the ocean, and look, they got the old cars and the surfboard, so I made myself a bag out of it. This bag is way too big for what I'm using. I'm only using about the bottom quarter of it, but it's going to grow. I have a knit blanket in here. If you've been with me for a while and you were here during the earlier part of this year in the winter time, January, February, March, you'll have seen this blanket before. This is my Mitre square blanket, but if you're new, this is going to be new to you. And what this is these are just little scraps of leftover sock yarn that you just make these little, let me see how big are my squares. I think they're 2.5 inches. Nope, they're 2-inch squares. So I'm making these little 2-inch Mitre squares, and I'm not sewing them together. I'm knitting them together as I go. When I get up to this other end, I'll show you. But right now, this is not wide enough. This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is only 12 squares wide, so that makes it 24 inches. That's definitely not wide enough. I don't need a king size blanket, but I would like to have a nice size one to put on the back of the couch or to cover up with in the winter. With all these fun colors, it would be nice to knit underneath this or read a book. So I'm trying to mix in some of the solids with some of the self-striping and some of the variegated. I was very lucky. A couple years ago, I was giving a small bag of someone else's sock leftover yarns. I had a couple people send them to me in the mail through Instagram, one of their Christmas projects they had going on. So because I don't have that much sock yarn, and I would definitely have to be purchasing it to work on this. So it's been really fun. But for some reason, it's like, since it's cold where you guys are at, I've decided it's going to be cold enough to start working on it here in Florida. Even though, as I said the other day, it's still a heat index of over 100. Yeah, I put a little blanket on me. It gets a little warm, but it doesn't take too long to make a square. Let's bring you in a little closer so you can see. I have a gray with the red speckles. I've got this sunshiny one. This one was a pair of socks for Robbie. This one is my current favorite. It's got the blues and the greens, and this does not do it justice. It's so beautiful. I would love to have a sweater made completely out of this yarn. It's very oceany colors. I'm working on a straight gray one hiding in here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The basic idea with these blankets is after you start down, I started down with this square, and then you add in a couple squares, and then you add in a few more. But what you do is you're picking up stitches along here, and you're picking up stitches along here, and that way you can make this mitered square that goes sort of kind of almost in a diamond shape, but it's 2-inch square, so it's a square. But as you're working it from here, and you're decreasing to here. So it's going like this, in this V shape. You see how that goes? And I have one of my favorite stitch markers marking the center of the square. And I made this little pouch here that holds my needles so nothing falls off, because I'm just using double pointed needles to knit on this. But this is definitely one of those 5-year plans. When the winter times comes, you'll start seeing, if you have a lot of knitting friends on Instagram, you'll start seeing a lot of these miter squares popping up. Some people call them memory blankets, because you can remember, oh, I remember when I made that sock or something like that. There's a lot of wonderful hand-dyed sock yarn in here. Some of it is, like, this is something you can pick up at Joann and Michael's. It's a manufactured one, but most of these are hand-dyed. This is a really pretty green also. It's just nice to sit underneath this with all the different colors. The watermelon. All the different colors. Another watermelon. Just sitting in your lap while you're spending some time. I like to listen to an audiobook while knitting on this in the morning. Sometimes I have 10 minutes, a half hour in the morning. I mean, okay, I've got all day, but I like to keep myself on a certain schedule. So depending on when I get up, I like to make sure I am in the shower and doing all my chores are done by about 8:30. So depending on when I get up, I might have an hour or I might have 2 or 3 hours to work on this in the morning, if the cats allow it. Now all these ends are, after I go ahead and give it a wash, I'll go ahead and trim these. But I am stitching my ends in. I'm knitting them in as I'm knitting the next squares. Like this yellow right here is from this square down here, and I'm just holding this yarn and this yarn together, and I'm just knitting it, and it's going to weave it all the way in for me, and then I just have the little end to trim off. It's my blanket. I don't mind if I get these little blurps and that my blocks aren't pure and clean. I don't mind having that little extra stitched in because, first of all, it's a lot of fun color, and second of all, I do not have to weave in 2 ends per block. That's crazy talk. So yep, that's my miter square blanket. And that's everything I've worked on this week. I have probably about another 20 things on my list and in my head that I'm just dying to get to, but I'm trying to control myself. This is already a lot of things. So this is 13 different projects, and of course the postcards, I count them as one project, but I probably worked on 15 or 20 postcards. So that's a lot in 1 week. I've been just delegating myself little pockets of time, a little hour here or 2 hours here, depending on the project, and just working on that. That way I'm touching all of these projects all throughout the week, and I have plenty of time to get what I need to done. With all these little pockets of time, I think this is probably the one project I worked on the most, because this is going to be a Christmas gift. And I want to make sure, as you saw how tall this is at 24 inches, it's going to take me a while to get it done. And I want to make sure I get it done in time, because this has to actually go in the mail. And I like to get my Christmas presents mailed out not too long after Thanksgiving, so that gives it plenty of time before that big mad rush to the post office. Okay, if you get your present from me a little bit early, you can either open it early or put it underneath the tree and just build up that excitement until. I used to watch this one podcaster. She's no longer a podcast. It's very sad. A lot of people get burnt out after about 5 or 6 years of podcasting because, like I said, it is a lot of work to do these YouTube videos and take care of the whole channel and everything like that. But I enjoy it, and I'm only into year 2, so I'm good. But she said that if you want to see progress, to work on only one project at a time. Because if you have 5 hours a week to work on a project, you can get a lot done on one project, or you can get a little done on 10 projects. So this week I've been trying to mainly focus on this one and then just work on the other ones in between here and there. I did not pick this one up on Sunday at all. That's it for me. I hope you guys had fun with this video, and I hope you guys are working on your Christmas presents too. Bye!